The skies above Armageddon split open like a wound in reality itself, not with the familiar horror of a chaos rift or the cold geometry of a Necron tomb ship, but with something else entirely, something impossible. A golden light pierced the eternal smog of the Forge world, brighter than any star, more radiant than the Emperor's own throne room. The light descended, and within it stood a figure that defied every law the Imperium understood. Spiky black hair, orange guy, an aura of pure energy crackling around his form like bottled lightning. Goku had arrived in the 41st millennium, and the galaxy would drown in the consequences. Imperial sensors screamed across 12 sectors. Astropaths collapsed, their minds seared by the psychic aftershock of something that simply should not exist. In the command spire of High Kakarot, Lord Commander Barthas watched his tactical displays go haywire. Power readings that exceeded Titan-class reactors, energy signatures that made plasma cores look like candle flames. And yet, no warp contamination, no demon stench, no Xenos identifier. The unknown was the greatest terror in the Imperium, and this unknown smiled as it touched down on scorched earth, where millions had died just hours before. Orc bodies still smoldered in the ruins. The first human to see him up close was a guardsman, Private Keller, 301st Armageddon Steel Legion, 19 years old, 3 months of combat experience, already aged beyond his years. He'd watched his entire squad die to greenskin choppers that morning. Now he stood alone in a crater, laser gun trembling in his hands, staring at the impossible. The figure looked human but radiated power that made Keller's teeth ache. When those black eyes met his, Keller felt something he hadn't experienced since childhood. Not fear, not even awe, hope. The most dangerous emotion in the Imperium of man. Goku stretched his arms, rolling his shoulders like he'd just finished a light workout instead of crossing dimensions. The air around him shimmered with residual Kai energy, a concept utterly alien to this universe. No warp, no psychic sorcery, just pure life force weaponized beyond mortal comprehension. He surveyed the battlefield with the casual confidence of someone who'd saved universes before. Burning tanks, collapsed buildings, bodies everywhere, human and orc alike. His expression shifted from curiosity to something darker, concern, maybe even anger. He'd seen war before, but this felt different, heavier, like the entire planet was drowning in despair. "Hey," Goku called out to Keller, his voice startlingly normal, friendly even. "You okay? This place looks pretty rough." The words were in perfect Gothic, though Goku had never learned the language. The dimensional breach had done something to him, wired his mind to understand this new reality. Keller couldn't respond. His mouth worked soundlessly, trying to form words his brain couldn't process. The figure before him violated everything the ecclesiarchy taught. Power without the God Emperor's blessing. Strength without decades of hypno-indoctrination. Joy in a galaxy where joy was heresy. And that smile, that damned, genuine smile, it was the most terrifying thing Keller had ever witnessed. Across the planet, Space Marines of the Celestial Lions chapter detected the anomaly. Brother Captain Akin studied the data feeds, his gene-enhanced mind processing information at superhuman speed. The energy signature came from a single individual, one person generating enough power to level cities. No armor, no weaponry, no mechanical augmentation. Impossible, yet the sensor readings didn't lie. He opened a Vox channel to his brothers. Prepare for contact with unknown entity. Classification, Omega level threat. Authorization to deploy full chapter strength. 40 battle brothers began arming themselves. Bolters loaded, chainsaws blessed, prayers whispered to the Emperor. They would investigate this newcomer, and if necessary, they would end him. In the warp, something stirred. The 4 Chaos Gods turned their infinite attention toward the disturbance. Horn felt the battle lust radiating from this warrior, the endless hunger for combat. Tzeentch sensed the possibilities, the infinite futures now branching from this single moment. Nurgle tasted the life force, so potent it could sustain plagues for millennia. Slayanesh shuddered with desire at the purity of sensation this being could experience. They did not understand what had entered their playground, but they wanted it. Corruption, mutation, damnation. The great game had a new piece on the board, and the Chaos Gods would not rest until this Goku entity belonged to them. If you're hungry for more tales of impossible crossovers and grim-dark horror, subscribe and join the thousands who dare to imagine what happens when heroes enter the nightmare of the 41st millennium. Because in Warhammer 40k, even the strongest warriors learn a brutal truth. Power means nothing when the entire galaxy is designed to break you. Goku stood in the ruins of Armageddon, unaware that his arrival had just condemned billions to a new K. End of hell. The Imperium didn't need heroes, it needed martyrs, and the grimdark universe was about to teach the Saiyan exactly what that meant. Goku took a step forward, and the ground beneath his feet cracked, not from weight, but from the sheer density of energy surrounding him. Private Keller stumbled backward, his lasgun clattering to the rubble-strewn ground. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to report, to do something, but his legs wouldn't move. This being had done nothing threatening, yet the air itself seemed to bend around him. In the distance, sirens wailed across Hive Acheron, emergency protocols activating, blast doors slamming shut. Millions of civilians herded like cattle into shelter bunkers that wouldn't save them from whatever this was. The Imperium's first response to the unknown was always the same: assume apocalypse, prepare for extinction. The Saiyan's expression shifted as he noticed Keller's fear. His smile faded into something more serious, more concerned. He raised his hands slowly, palms open in what he must have thought was a universal gesture of peace. "Easy there, I'm not gonna hurt you." The words were gentle, almost kind. Keller's mind recoiled from the concept. Kindness from a being of such power was illogical, dangerous. The strong did not comfort the weak in the Imperium. They commanded them, used them, discarded them. This stranger operated on rules that didn't exist in the 41st millennium. That made him more terrifying than any demon Keller could imagine. Across the sector, Brother Captain Akin's strike force thundered across the wasteland in Rhino transports. 8 armored vehicles, each carrying 5 space marines, moving at speeds that would pulverize unaugmented humans. The Celestial Lions were known for their honor, their adherence to the Codex Astartes, their unwavering loyalty to the throne. Ikeni had fought orcs, Eldar, traitors, and worse in his 2 centuries of service. He'd killed a Chaos Sorcerer in single combat, survived orbital bombardment, and held a breach against 1,000 cultists with only 3 brothers at his side. None of that prepared him for the sensor data streaming across his helmet display. The entity's power signature was climbing, not attacking, not moving, just existing, and reality strained under the pressure. In the warp, demons pressed against the veil between dimensions. Lesser entities of Khorne howled with frustrated rage, sensing battle lust but unable to reach it. Tzeentch's horrors gibbered in confusion, their precognitive abilities useless against this impossible variable. The warp itself recoiled from Goku's presence, like oil refusing to mix with water. He was anathema to chaos, not through holy wards or the Emperor's light, but through sheer incompatibility. His energy was clean, pure, life itself weaponized and refined. The demons could no more corrupt him than fire could drown, and that made the Dark Gods furious. What they could not corrupt, they would destroy. Goku crouched down, bringing himself to eye level with the terrified guardsman. "My name's Goku. What's yours?" The question was so absurdly normal that Keller nearly laughed. Nearly. Instead, his training kicked in. Name, rank, serial number. The litany that kept Imperial soldiers sane when facing the incomprehensible. "Private Keller, sir. 301st Armageddon Steel Legion. ID number 773925. 1. His voice cracked on the last digit. Goku nodded, as if this meant something to him. "Keller, good to meet you. Can you tell me what happened here? Who was attacking?" The Saiyan gestured to the orc corpses scattered across the ruins. Simple question, but answering felt like treason somehow. Before Keller could respond, the air split with the roar of jump packs. 3 assault marines descended from the smoke-choked sky, their armor painted in the golden yellow and cobalt blue of the Celestial Lions. They landed in a triangle formation around Goku, bolt pistols raised, chainsaws idling with hungry mechanical growls. The lead Marine, Sergeant Amadi, amplified his voice through his helmet's Vox speakers. "Unidentified entity, you stand on holy ground of the Imperium of man. Identify yourself immediately or face the Emperor's judgment." The words were ritual, procedure, but Amadi's finger was already tightening on the trigger. Space Marines didn't negotiate with unknowns, they eliminated threats. Goku stood slowly, hands still raised, his expression shifting to disappointment. He'd hoped for a peaceful first contact, should have known better. The armored warriors before him radiated aggression, their enhanced physiology pumping combat drugs and adrenaline through augmented blood. He could sense their power, far beyond normal humans, but still so fragile compared to what he'd faced. The instant sorrow that crossed his face was genuine. These soldiers thought they could threaten him, thought their weapons posed danger. They had no idea what they were dealing with, and Goku hated having to teach people lessons through violence. But the 41st millennium didn't offer alternatives. "Look, I don't want any trouble," Goku said, his tone still calm but edged with warning. "I just got here and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. If you could just point me toward whoever's in charge, we can talk this out." Sergeant Amadi's response was to pull the trigger. 3 bolt rounds screamed toward Goku's chest, each one a mass reactive shell designed to penetrate ceramite armor and detonate inside the target. Hypersonic death wrapped in adamantium tips. The shots were perfect, textbook accuracy. They would have killed anything in the Imperium's catalog of threats. But Goku wasn't in any catalog. He didn't dodge, didn't even flinch. The rounds struck his GI and simply stopped, frozen in midair by an invisible barrier of ki. Then they clattered harmlessly to the ground. The silence that followed was absolute. Sergeant Amadi's world narrowed to a single impossible moment. Bolt rounds didn't stop. They couldn't stop. Physics, ballistics, the fundamental laws of reality all dictated that his shots should have torn through flesh and bone. Instead, they lay on the ground like spent shell casings, still smoking. His enhanced mind processed 1,000 combat scenarios per second, running through every Xenos threat classification, every daemon manifestation protocol. Nothing matched. The entity before him had violated the Omnissiah's sacred principles. That left only one conclusion: warp corruption beyond comprehension. "Which?" Amadi snarled, his voice dripping with venomous certainty. "Brothers, purge the unclean." The 3 assault marines attacked as one, their training synchronizing into a lethal ballet of ceramite and fury. Chainsaws roared to full throttle, their teeth blurring into circles of adamantium death. Jump packs fired in controlled bursts, propelling the Space Marines forward with enough force to crater concrete. They moved with the precision of warriors who'd killed for centuries, who'd faced horrors that would shatter normal minds. Goku watched them come with something like sadness in his eyes. He'd seen this before, good soldiers following orders, convinced they were fighting evil. He didn't want to hurt them, but he wouldn't let them hurt him either. Sometimes the lesson had to be harsh. The first chainsaw swung toward Goku's neck with enough force to decapitate a Carnifex. The Saiyan moved, not fast by his standards, just enough to avoid the blow. The blade passed through empty air where his head had been a microsecond before. Sergeant Amadi's combat protocols screamed warnings. The target had moved without acceleration, without momentum transfer, defying every law of motion. The 2nd and 3rd Marines adjusted their attacks mid-swing, their gene-enhanced reflexes buying them nanoseconds of response time. It didn't matter. Goku was already gone, reappearing 10 meters away, his expression troubled. "I really don't want to fight you guys," he said, his voice carrying clearly over the whine of cooling jump packs. Brother Captain Ikin arrived at that moment, his command squad surrounding him like a wall of golden ceramite. He took in the scene instantly. 3 assault marines off balance, an unknown entity unharmed, bolt rounds scattered uselessly on the ground. His tactical assessment was immediate and brutal. Conventional weapons ineffective. Entity possesses superhuman speed and defensive capabilities, threat level escalating beyond initial estimates. Akini raised his power fist, the crackling energy field surrounding it capable of pulverizing battle tanks. "Entity, you have committed violence against the Adeptus Astartes. There is no mercy for such transgression. Stand down or be destroyed." His words were ritual, but his tone suggested only one acceptable outcome. Goku's aura flared, golden light rippling around him like liquid fire. The ground beneath his feet cracked further, spiderwebs of fractures spreading outward. Space Marines stumbled, their armor's gyro-stabilizers struggling to compensate for the sudden gravitational anomaly. Private Keller, still frozen nearby, felt his teeth rattle in his skull. The air tasted like ozone and copper, like the moment before lightning strikes. This was power beyond anything the guardsmen had ever witnessed. Greater than Titans, more terrible than orbital bombardment, and it came from a single man who looked genuinely upset about having to use it. "I tried talking," Goku said quietly, his voice somehow audible despite the energy storm. "You guys didn't want to listen." The Saiyan moved. One instant he stood before the Space Marines. The next, he was among them. Not attacking, just touching. A palm pressed against Sergeant Ahmadi's chest plate. The assault marine flew backward like he'd been hit by an artillery shell, his armored form carving a trench through rubble before crashing into a collapsed building. The impact would have killed a normal human instantly. Ahmadi's reinforced skeleton and redundant organs kept him alive, but barely. Warning runes blazed across his helmet display, cracked ribs, ruptured organ, internal bleeding, all from a single touch delivered without malice. The other two assault marines suffered similar fates, their bodies ragdolling across the battlefield before falling silent. Not dead. Goku had calibrated his strikes perfectly, but broken, defeated, humiliated. Brother Captain Ekini watched his brothers fall and felt something he hadn't experienced in 2 centuries. Doubt. The Emperor's angels of death, humanity's finest warriors, swatted aside like insects, and the entity responsible looked regretful, not triumphant. Standard Imperial doctrine was clear: escalate. Until the threat is neutralized. Call in Thunderhawks, request orbital strikes, exterminatus if necessary. But something in Ikane's enhanced mind, the part that made him a captain instead of just another line marine, recognized a terrible truth. This being wasn't trying to destroy them. He was holding back, restraining himself with every movement, which meant the power they'd witnessed so far was merely a fraction of his capability. What horror had entered the Imperium? Across the battlefield, thousands of Imperial guardsmen watched through scopes and surveyor equipment. They'd seen Space Marines dispatch enemies with contemptuous ease their entire lives. Watched angels of death carve through orc hordes and heretic armies like divine instruments of the Emperor's will. Now those same angels lay broken, defeated by something that looked almost human, something that had tried to talk before fighting. The psychological impact rippled through the assembled regiments like a virus. If Space Marines could fall so easily, what hope did normal humans have? The Commissariat would execute dozens for defeatist thoughts in the coming hours. But the seed was planted. Doubt, the deadliest weapon in the grimdark universe, had found new purchase in loyal hearts. The Vox channels exploded with panicked reports. Every Imperial commander on Armageddon heard the same impossible account. Space Marines down, enemy unharmed, conventional weapons useless. Lord Commander Barthas stood in his command throne, hands gripping the armrests until his knuckles went white. 50 years of military service had taught him one inviolable truth. When the Adeptus Astartes failed, you escalated to God machines. He opened the priority channel to the Legio Metallica, the Titan Legion stationed in the northern wastes. This is Barthas, emergency authorization Omega-7. Deploy battle titans to coordinates marked. Target is single hostile entity. Fire for effect. The response came immediately, cold and mechanical. Compliance. Princeps awakening. Estimated deployment, 12 minutes. Goku stood among the fallen Space Marines, his aura dimming back to a faint shimmer. He looked at his hands, flexing his fingers slowly. He'd pulled those punches as much as he could, but these warriors were tougher than he'd expected. Their armor absorbed impacts that would vaporize normal people. Their bodies could withstand trauma that should shatter bones, and still they'd fallen so easily. A familiar frustration settled in his chest, the same feeling he'd had on his own Earth when enemies couldn't keep up, when holding back was harder than fighting full strength. He'd hoped this new universe might offer challenges. Instead, it seemed fragile, breakable. He didn't know yet how wrong that assumption was. Brother Captain Akini forced himself to his feet, his power armor's servos whining in protest. Damage indicators painted his vision red. 3 of his ribs were cracked, his left arm hung useless, and his pride was in pieces. But he was Adeptus Astartes. He did not yield. "What manner of Xenos are you?" he demanded, blood flecking the inside of his helmet. Goku turned to face him, respect flickering across his features. The Saiyan had fought enough warriors to recognize courage. This soldier was broken but refused to quit. "I'm not whatever Xenos means," Goku replied honestly. "I'm just a guy who ended up here by accident. I'm looking for a way home." The ground trembled, not from Goku's energy, but from something else, something massive. Private Keller, still watching from his crater, felt his heart sink into his boots. He knew that rhythmic shaking. Every soldier on Armageddon knew it, the tread of gods. Over the horizon, 3 silhouettes emerged through the smoke, each one tall enough to scrape the clouds. Warhound Titans, the smallest class of god machines, but still 60 feet of adamantium death. Their void shields shimmered into existence, creating translucent bubbles of protective energy. Plasma destructors and turbo laser batteries powered up with whines that hurt human ears, and painted on each machine's armor were the kill markers of 100 battles. These were not machines, they were walking apocalypses. The lead Titan, Canis Bellum, was piloted by Princeps Valdor, a man who'd spent 40 years hardwired into his war engine. His consciousness had long ago blurred with the Titan's machine spirit until he couldn't tell where he ended and the god machine began. Through the Titan's sensors, he saw the target, a single humanoid figure small enough to crush underfoot. The sensor data made no sense. Energy output exceeding plasma reactors. No armor, no visible weapons. Standing calmly among defeated space marines like he was waiting for a bus. Valdor's tactical protocols identified this as a trick, camouflage, misdirection. No single organism could pose a threat to a Titan. "Target acquired," he voxed to his fellow Princeps. "Weapons free. Purge protocol authorized." The Titans opened fire simultaneously. Turbo lasers lanced through the air, beams of concentrated energy hot enough to melt tank armor. Plasma destructors belched spheres of sun-hot matter. The ground between the Titans and Goku became a hellscape of intersecting fire, a kill zone that nothing should survive. The bombardment lasted 3 seconds. When the smoke cleared, Goku stood untouched, his aura flaring bright gold. He'd raised one hand, and the attacks had simply dissipated against an invisible barrier. His expression had shifted from confusion to irritation. These people kept attacking without even trying to communicate. What kind of universe was this? "Okay, seriously," he called out, his voice somehow carrying over the Titan's reactor hum. "Can we just talk?" Princeps Valdor's mind recoiled from what his senses showed. Impossible. The word became a prayer, a mantra against insanity. Titan-grade weapons had no effect. The target's power signature was climbing, not from damage, but from what seemed like annoyance. Valdor had fought orcs, Eldar, even a greater demon of Khorne once. His war engine had never retreated, never faltered. But looking at this small figure through his sensor feeds, the Princeps felt something he'd thought was burned out of him decades ago. Fear, not for himself. He'd accepted death when he bonded with Canis Bellum, but fear for the planet, for the Imperium, for humanity itself. Goku rose into the air, levitating without propulsion or anti-grav technology, his ki simply denying gravity's pull. He floated until he was eye level with the Titan's cockpits, arms crossed over his chest. The war machines tracked him with their weapons, but Valdor hesitated. Something in his warrior's instinct screamed that escalation was suicide. The entity wasn't attacking, wasn't advancing, just hovering there, waiting. Through the Titan's external speakers, Valdor amplified his voice. "What are you?" The question came out hollow, mechanical. Goku's response was surprisingly gentle. "Someone who doesn't want to fight. But if you keep shooting at me, I'm gonna have to defend myself, and I really don't think you want that." The threat wasn't delivered with malice. It was a warning, a plea. The difference terrified Valdor more than any roar of hatred could. The standoff lasted exactly 7 seconds. In that frozen moment, millions of souls held their breath. Guardsmen in trenches, civilians in bunkers, adepts in command centers, all waiting for the inevitable carnage. But the decision wasn't made by any human authority. In the warp, Tzench's eyes opened with sudden interest. The architect of fate saw the threads of possibility tangling around this newcomer, and woven through them was opportunity. A whisper slid through reality, finding the one mind on Armageddon already teetering on the edge. Princeps Valdor felt something cold touch his thoughts. Just a suggestion. One word, delivered with the weight of cosmic certainty. Fire. His finger pressed the trigger before his conscious mind could question why. The plasma destructor's blast took Goku by surprise, not because it hurt him, but because he'd thought they were actually going to talk. The sphere of superheated matter struck his chest and exploded with the force of a tactical nuke. The shockwave flattened everything within 100 meters. Private Keller was thrown from his crater, his body tumbling like a ragdoll before slamming into rubble. The light was blinding, turning night into day. When vision returned, Goku still floated in the air, his GI scorched, but his body untouched. The irritation on his face had transformed into something else. Anger. Not the berserker rage of Korn's champions, but the cold fury of someone who'd tried everything to avoid violence and been rejected at every turn. Fine, Goku said quietly, his voice barely audible over the crackling flames. You want to see what I can do? I'll show you. His aura exploded outward, golden light intensifying until it hurt to look at. The air itself screamed as his power level climbed. 1%, 5%, 10% of his true strength. The Titan's void shields rippled and sparked, struggling to compensate for the gravitational distortions. Princeps Valdor watched his sensor arrays go haywire, readings spiking beyond their maximum calibrations. The entity's power output had just increased by an order of magnitude. And he was smiling now, but it wasn't the gentle expression from before. This smile belonged to a predator, a warrior. Someone who'd killed gods and destroyed planets and held the weight of universes in his hands. Brother Captain Akeen, still conscious despite his injuries, understood in that terrible moment what they'd done. They'd backed a peaceful being into a corner, forced him to become what they'd accused him of being. The Imperium's default response to anything unknown, immediate violence, had created the very threat they'd feared. It was a pattern as old as the Age of Strife, the same mistake that had birthed chaos itself. Humanity encountering something beyond its understanding and attacking it out of paranoid terror. Akene tried to shout a warning, to call for a ceasefire, but his vox was damaged. His voice died in his throat, swallowed by the howling wind of Goku's ascending power. All he could do was watch the apocalypse unfold. Goku raised one hand, palm forward, fingers spread. Energy gathered at the center, crackling ki condensing into a sphere of pure destructive force. A Kamehameha, scaled down to avoid planetary devastation, but still powerful enough to vaporize cities. The Titan's machine spirit screamed warnings their princeps couldn't ignore. Target preparing. G-weapon discharge. Energy density approaching critical threshold. Recommended action, full retreat. But Titans didn't retreat. They couldn't. Their princeps were wired too deeply into the war machine's pride to allow withdrawal. Valdor armed every weapon system, knowing with perfect certainty it wouldn't be enough. He thought of his wife, dead 30 years, his children grown old while he stayed young in the Titan's life support systems. He prayed to the Omnissiah for mercy and received only static. The blast never came. Goku held the attack, his hand trembling with the effort of restraint. He looked at the Titans, at the fallen space marines, at the terrified guardsmen still struggling to rise from the rubble. He saw fear, desperation, soldiers following orders because that's what soldiers did. They weren't evil, they were just scared, trapped in a system that taught them violence was the only answer. His anger drained away, replaced by something worse, pity. The energy sphere dissipated, fading into harmless light. "I'm not your enemy," Goku said, exhaustion creeping into his voice. "I don't know what kind of galaxy this is, but where I come from, we at least try talking before we start killing each other." In the Imperial Command Center, Lord Commander Barthas watched the tactical feeds with a growing sense of horror. The entity had prepared an attack that would have destroyed his Titans. The projections were clear: total annihilation, no survivors. And then it had simply stopped. Chosen mercy over victory. That was perhaps the most terrifying thing Barthas had ever witnessed. Enemies you could understand. They wanted territory, resources, survival. But this being operated on principles that had no place in the 41st millennium. Compassion, restraint, hope. Those were weaknesses here, vulnerabilities to be exploited. Yet somehow this stranger wielded them alongside. A godlike power. What doctrine covered that scenario? What tactical manual prepared commanders for an enemy who refused to be an enemy? Across the planet, in the shadowed places where faith twisted into fanaticism, Cardinal Matthias of the Ecclesiarchy watched the same feeds and reached a different conclusion. This entity spoke of peace, showed mercy to the Emperor's warriors, rejected violence even when attacked. These were not the actions of a righteous servant of the God Emperor. These were the lies of the archenemy, wrapped in beautiful deception. Chaos corrupted not just through obvious horror, but through insidious hope, through the false promise that the universe could be anything other than the grim-dark hell it had always been. The Cardinal's ancient fingers trembled as he reached for his voxcaster. If the military couldn't destroy this threat, perhaps the faithful could. He began composing orders for his fraternities militia, billions of zealots who would gladly die to purge the heretic. Goku had shown mercy. The Imperium would show him what mercy earned in return. The zealots came like a tide of flesh and fire. Across Armageddon's hive cities, Cardinal Matthias's pronouncement echoed through every voxcaster and chapel speaker. A false prophet walks among us, speaking honeyed lies of peace while the galaxy burns. The God Emperor demands his blood. Within minutes, the fraternities militia mobilized. These weren't trained soldiers. They were factory workers and hive gangers, housewives and children, all united by fanatical devotion. They carried autoguns and improvised weapons, farming tools sharpened to killing edges, incendiary devices blessed by local priests. 10 million strong, willing to die, eager even, because death in service to the Emperor meant salvation. And this stranger threatened everything they'd been taught to believe. Goku sensed them coming before the first wave crested the horizon. His key perception painted a picture of countless life forces, weak individually, but overwhelming. In number, like ants swarming towards sugar, he descended to ground level, standing beside the still recovering brother Captain Akine. "More soldiers?" Goku asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "How many people does it take for you guys to realize fighting me isn't working?" Akine coughed blood, his enhanced physiology slowly knitting broken organs. "They are not soldiers," he managed, his voice a harsh rasp. "They are faithful, and faith in the 41st millennium does not bend, it breaks. Or it consumes." The Space Marine's warning carried the weight of centuries. He'd seen faith kill more people than any weapon. The first wave hit like a human tsunami. Thousands of bodies surging forward, screaming prayers and hymns. Autoguns chattered, filling the air with solid slugs. Molotov cocktails arced through the smoke, bursting into orange flames. Goku stood motionless, his protective aura deflecting bullets like rain off a roof. None of the attacks could harm him, but that didn't stop the zealots. They clambered over their own dead, pressing forward with inhuman determination. Some carried children on their shoulders, infants who would grow up learning this moment as sacred martyrdom. Goku's expression twisted with horror. These weren't warriors, they were civilians, families, people who'd been told he was evil and believed it without question. How could he fight this without becoming the monster they feared? Private Kellor watched from a collapsed building, his mind fragmenting under the impossibility of it all. The stranger could have killed everyone here, should have, by every tactical calculation. Instead, he just stood there, letting bullets bounce off him, refusing to retaliate even as thousands tried to kill him. It was madness. In the Imperium, power was used, hoarded, deployed with ruthless efficiency, but this being wielded godlike strength and chose not to. The cognitive dissonance was too much for Keller's indoctrinated mind. He began to laugh, high and broken, the sound of sanity cracking. Was the stranger insane, or was the entire Imperium? The question had no good answer. Goku raised his voice, amplifying it with ki until it thundered across the battlefield. "Stop! I'm not your enemy. I don't want to hurt anyone." The words should have meant something, should have given the zealots pause. Instead, they interpreted it as the archenemy's deception. The false promises chaos always offered before dragging souls into damnation. Cardinal Matthias, watching from his cathedral spire, smiled with grim satisfaction. The entity's refusal to kill only proved its corruption. A righteous warrior of the Emperor would purge without hesitation. This stranger's mercy was the greatest evidence of his heresy. The Cardinal opened Vox channels to every remaining military asset on the planet. Orbital bombardment authorized, target coordinates marked. The Emperor protects. In high orbit, the strike cruiser Redemption of Terror received the Cardinal's orders. Captain Yorvan stared at the targeting data, his hands hovering over the firing controls. The coordinates marked a section of Armageddon containing 10 million Imperial citizens. The zealots the Cardinal had sent to their deaths. Standard protocol was clear. Collateral damage was acceptable when purging corruption. The Emperor's servants died well, their sacrifice meaningful. But something about this situation felt wrong. The entity had demonstrated power to destroy planets, yet stood passive while civilians attacked it. Yorvan had served the Imperium for 90 years. He'd authorized exterminatus on 3 worlds, watched billions die screaming. Never hesitated, never questioned. But now, finger on the trigger, he found himself paralyzed by doubt. The bombardment came anyway, not from the Redemption of Terror, but from a smaller frigate whose captain had fewer scruples. Lance strikes tore through the atmosphere, coherent light beams powerful enough to boil oceans. They converged on Goku's position with geometric precision, each one carrying enough energy to level city blocks. The Saiyan saw them coming, saw the civilians around him who wouldn't survive, made his choice in a microsecond. His aura exploded outward, expanding into a dome of golden energy that covered a square kilometer. The lance strikes hit the barrier and dissipated harmlessly, their destructive force absorbed and negated. Below the shield, 10 million zealots stood unharmed, many not even realizing they'd been saved. They just kept attacking, kept screaming hymns, kept dying on an enemy who refused to let them die. The scene was being broadcast across the planet. Every Imperial citizen with access to a vidscreen watched as the stranger protected the very people trying to kill him. Orbital bombardment defeated. Millions saved. Not through violence, but through an act of pure defensive compassion. In the hive cities, in the factory floors, in the underbelly of Armageddon society, something shifted. The ecclesiarchy's narrative began to crack. If this being was truly evil, why protect his enemies? If he served chaos, why not let the Imperium destroy its own faithful? The questions spread like wildfire through the lower classes, the ones who'd always borne the brunt of Imperial indifference. Maybe, just maybe, the stranger was telling the truth. And if that was true, what did it say about the galaxy they lived in? The warp convulsed. In the Imperium, where thought became reality and emotion manifested as living nightmare, the 4 Chaos Gods focused their infinite attention on a single point in reality. Goku's shield of ki had done more than deflect orbital strikes. It had radiated outward through dimensions, a beacon of pure life energy in a realm defined by death and corruption. Korn's brass throne shook with frustrated rage. This warrior possessed strength beyond comprehension yet refused to kill. It was obscene, blasphemous. Tzeentch's infinite eyes swirled with calculations, seeing futures where this anomaly reshaped the galaxy. Nurgle felt the vitality radiating from the stranger and hungered to rot it. Slanesh tasted the purity of sensation this being could experience and craved to twist it. The great game had found its newest obsession. On Armageddon's surface, reality began to fracture. The sky turned colors that shouldn't exist, purple bleeding into dimensions the human eye couldn't process. The air tasted of copper and ash and something sweetly rotten. Brother Captain Akeen, his centuries of experience recognizing the signs, forced himself to his feet. "Warp breach imminent," he gasped into his damaged Vox. "All units, sanctification protocols, the Neverborn come." Goku felt it too, though he didn't understand what he was sensing. Something wrong was pressing against the fabric of space, trying to claw its way through. Something that felt like Majin Buu's evil, but magnified across infinite dimensions, worse than anything he'd faced on his own Earth. The rift opened with a sound like reality screaming, a tear in space, and through it poured nightmares given flesh. Lesser demons of all 4 gods, their forms defying geometry and sanity. Bloodletters with brass skin and hellblades, pink horrors cackling with insane glee, plague-bearers trailing disease and despair, demonettes moving with obscene grace. They materialized by the hundreds, and where their feet touched ground, the earth itself corrupted. Plants withered or grew into cancerous mockeries. Stone melted or transformed into screaming faces. The zealots, faced with actual demons instead of an imagined heretic, broke. Thousands fled screaming. Thousands more were cut down by creatures that existed only to kill and corrupt and torment. Goku's eyes widened. These things were different from the humans who'd attacked him. They radiated malice so pure it was almost physical. No confusion, no fear, no conflicted duty, just hatred and hunger and the desire to cause suffering. He'd fought evil before, Frieza, Cell, Bu, but this felt older, more fundamental, like looking at the universe's accumulated cruelty given form. A bloodletter charged him, its hellblade screaming through the air. Goku caught it with one hand, the demonic weapon shattering against his palm. The demon's surprise was almost comical before Goku's punch obliterated it, sending its essence screaming back into the warp. "Okay," the Saiyan said, his voice carrying dangerous certainty. "Now I can fight back." What followed wasn't a battle, it was an extermination. Goku moved through the demon horde like a storm through paper. Each strike was precisely calibrated, powerful enough to destroy the warp entity, but not so destructive it harmed fleeing civilians. A Kamehameha reduced a cluster of pink horrors to dissipating warp stuff. Instant transmission allowed him to appear behind a greater demon and shatter its spine before it could react. His speed created sonic booms that flattened lesser demons by the dozens. In 30 seconds, 300 Neverborn were banished back to the Imperium. In a minute, the rift began to close, unable to sustain itself against Goku's overwhelming presence. His Kai was anathema to the warp, his pure life force burning away corruption like sunlight through fog. The Imperial forces watched in stunned silence. Private Keller, his sanity teetering on the edge, witnessed something he'd been taught was impossible. Demons, manifestations of the galaxy's oldest horrors, destroyed effortlessly by a single being. Not through faith, not through the Emperor's blessing, through raw, undeniable power that needed no prayer or ritual. The Ecclesiarchy's doctrine crumbled in Keller's mind. If the stranger could banish demons without the God Emperor's intervention, what did that mean? Was he blessed by the Emperor despite his unorthodox nature? Or was he something beyond the Imperium's understanding entirely? The questions hurt worse than any physical wound. Brother Captain Akin limped toward Goku as the last demon dissipated. The Space Marine's armor was broken, his body battered, but his mind was clear. He'd seen enough. This entity, whatever it was, had just saved millions of Imperial citizens. Twice. First from orbital bombardment, now from demonic incursion. The Codex Astartes had protocols for threats. It also had protocols for allies, however unconventional. Akini sealed his helmet, amplified his vox, and spoke words he never thought he'd say. Entity designated Goku. On behalf of the Celestial Lions chapter, I request parley. You have proven your intentions through action. The Imperium owes you acknowledgement. It wasn't an apology. Space Marines didn't apologize, but it was recognition, a crack in the armor of Imperial dogma. Goku turned to face the broken Space Marine, breathing heavily from the exertion. Fighting demons had taken more effort than the Titans or the Zealots. These things drew strength from emotion and corruption, concepts foreign to his experience. "You want to talk now?" Goku asked, a hint of bitter humor in his voice. Took long enough. But his expression softened as he looked at Akine's injuries, at the scat, turd casualties, at the civilians stumbling away in shock. This warrior had tried to kill him, but he'd also just tried to warn him about the demon attack. There was honor here, buried beneath layers of indoctrination and fear. "Yeah," Goku said, his tone gentler. "Let's talk. But first, do you have anyone who can help these people?" He gestured to the wounded zealots, the broken guardsmen, the shell-shocked civilians. Even after everything, his first thought was for those who'd tried to kill him. The medici teams arrived in waves, servitors and field chirurgeons moving through the carnage with practiced efficiency. They didn't question why they were treating zealots who'd just attempted mass martyrdom. They simply worked, extracting the dying from rubble, applying synth skin to burns, administering pain suppressors. Goku watched them with quiet intensity, noting how mechanical the process felt. Back on Earth, people showed emotion when helping the injured. Here, the medics worked with the cold precision of machines. It unsettled him, made him wonder what kind of society could strip compassion from caregiving. Brother Captain Akini stood beside him, silent for a long moment, before speaking. "You asked what Xenos means earlier. It means alien, non-human. We have fought them for 10,000 years. Goku absorbed this, his expression thoughtful. 10,000 years of constant war. The number was staggering even by his standards. Is that all you do here? Fight? The question was innocent, genuinely curious. But it struck Akini like a bolt around. Was that all they did? The Space Marine's enhanced mind processed a lifetime of memories. Training, battle, more battle, brief respites between campaigns spent preparing for the next war. When was the last time he'd witnessed something beautiful that wasn't tactical perfection? When had he last thought about anything beyond duty and death? The answer shamed him in ways he couldn't articulate. "Yes," Akine said quietly. "That is all we do, all we have ever done. It is all the galaxy allows." Goku turned to face the Space Marine fully, and Akini saw something in those black eyes that hurt to witness. Pity, not contempt or superiority, just deep, genuine sadness for warriors trapped in an existence they couldn't escape. "That's awful," Goku said simply. "Where I come from, we fight too. Strong enemies, world-ending threats, stuff like that. But we also have families, friends. We eat together and train together and laugh together. Fighting is part of life, not the only thing." The words were casual, unrehearsed. To Goku, these were basic truths. To Akine, they described a paradise so alien it might as well be fiction. The Space Marine's psycho-conditioning screamed at him to reject such weakness. But something deeper, the human core buried beneath decades of gene forging, wept for what he'd never known. Around them, Imperial forces began to regroup, guardsmen emerging from cover, Titan princeps disconnecting from their machines, naval officers watching from orbit, all of them grappling with the same cognitive dissonance. Their enemy had saved them, twice. The tactical assessments flowing through command channels painted a picture no Imperial doctrine could reconcile. Entity possessed overwhelming force superiority. Entity chose non-lethal engagement despite provocation. Entity prioritized civilian protection over strategic advantage. Entity demonstrated hostility only toward warp-spawned threats. The conclusions were inescapable, and they violated every Imperial assumption, this being operated according to principles the Imperium had forgotten millennia ago, if it had ever known them at all. Lord Commander Barthas descended from his command spire in a Valkyrie gunship, flanked by an honor guard of Kasrkin stormtroopers. He was old, scarred, and wise enough to recognize when tactics needed to change. The military approach had failed catastrophically. Perhaps diplomacy, that ancient art practiced only with other human factions, might succeed where violence hadn't. The Valkyrie touched down 50 meters from Goku, and Barthas emerged in full dress uniform, medals weighing down his chest. He walked slowly, hands visible and empty, stopping precisely 10 meters away. Military courtesy for a potential superior officer. "I am Lord Commander Barthas, ranking Imperial authority on Armageddon. I come to negotiate terms." His voice carried the weariness of 50 years bearing the Imperium's weight. Goku studied the old commander with interest. This one felt different from the others. No rage, no fanaticism, just exhaustion and the weight of responsibility. Goku recognized it because he'd felt it himself, carrying Earth's survival on his shoulders time after time. "I'm Goku," he replied, offering his hand in the universal gesture of greeting. Barthas stared at the extended hand for a moment, confused by the informal gesture, before clasping it firmly. The handshake was brief, but in that contact, Barthas felt the power thrumming through Goku's body, like gripping a sun contained in flesh. The commander's tactical mind revised every estimate upward. This being could crack planets, and he was offering friendship. The irony was devastating. You said you arrived by accident, Barthas began, his military training providing structure to the unprecedented situation. Can you elaborate? Where do you originate? What is your purpose here? The questions were careful, non-accusatory. Intelligence gathering disguised as polite conversation. Goku appreciated the attempt at civility after hours of violence. I was training in something called the hyperbolic time chamber. There was an accident, some kind of dimensional rift. Next thing I knew, I was falling through space and landed here. I don't know how it happened or how to get back. The explainer. Tien was honest, almost embarrassingly so. In the Imperium, information was currency and leverage. Goku gave it away freely, trusting that honesty would be reciprocated. Barthas processed this, his weathered face betraying nothing. Dimensional travel was theoretically possible, he knew. The warp allowed it, after a fashion. But this entity claimed to have crossed dimensions without touching the Imperium, without corruption, without cost. The implications were staggering. If such technology existed, if such power could be harnessed, it could revolutionize the Imperium's understanding of reality itself, or destroy it. Both possibilities were equally likely. I see, Barthas said carefully, and your demonstration against the Neverborn, the demons. You possess abilities that counter warp entities without conventional means. This is unprecedented. He chose his words like a man diffusing explosives. One wrong phrase could restart hostilities, or worse, reveal how desperately the Imperium needed what Goku represented. Hope, the most dangerous commodity in the grim-dark universe. Barthas decided to show him. Words wouldn't convey the reality of the 41st millennium, so he brought Goku to the observation deck of a grounded transport, activated the holo projector, and displayed the galaxy. Not propaganda, not imperial glory. The truth. Hive cities where billions lived and died without seeing sunlight. Factory worlds where workers were chained to assembly lines from birth to death. Agri-worlds where entire populations existed solely to produce food for distant conflicts. Goku watched in growing horror as the projections continued. Penal legions sent to die clearing minefields. Servitors, humans lobotomized and augmented into living tools. Children conscripted at 10 for the Imperial Guard. This is the Imperium of man, Barthas said flatly. 10,000 worlds, quadrillions of souls, all ground beneath the gears of survival. The images shifted. Orc wars consuming entire sectors. Tyrannid hive fleets devouring planets down to bedrock. Nikra, on tomb worlds awakening with technology that rewrote physics. Eldar raiders stealing souls for their dying god. Tau expanding with false promises of the greater good. Chaos cultists sacrificing millions to summon demons. These are our enemies, Barthas continued, his voice never wavering. They do not negotiate, they do not compromise, they exist only to destroy or corrupt or consume us. We fight them all, simultaneously, across 1,000,000 battlefronts. We have fought for 10,000 years. We will fight for 10,000 more, or we will die. The Lord Commander's eyes met Goku's. This is the galaxy you have entered. Goku stood silent, processing what he'd seen. His universe had threats, Frieza's empire, the androids, Majin Buu. But they were isolated incidents, challenges to overcome and move past. This place was different. The threats were eternal, infinite. The entire galaxy locked in a death spiral with no escape. How do you live like this? Goku asked, his voice barely above a whisper. How do you keep going when everything is this hopeless? It wasn't judgment, just honest incomprehension from someone whose life had been defined by overcoming impossible odds through effort and optimism. Barthas almost smiled, almost. We endure because we must. Because surrender means extinction. Because the alternative to suffering is nothing at all. Brother Captain Akin joined them on the observation deck, his armor's auto-repair systems having done what they could. You speak of hope, the Space Marine said to Goku. Of joy and laughter and peace. These things exist in your universe. They cannot exist here. The Imperium does not allow them because they are weaknesses, vulnerabilities that chaos exploits. A man who hopes can be disappointed. A man who loves can be hurt. A man who dreams can be corrupted by promises of better things. His voice carried the weight of Kondiatatashur. chinning so deep it had become genetic. We are what the galaxy demands. Weapons without doubt, soldiers without fear, angels without mercy. Anything less, and humanity dies screaming. Goku's fists clenched, not in anger but in frustration. He'd trained his whole life to protect people, to save them, to give them futures worth living for. The idea that protection meant destroying everything that made life valuable was fundamentally wrong. Yet looking at the hollow projections, at the endless horrors besieging humanity from all sides, he couldn't immediately argue against it. His power could destroy threats, but could it change an entire galaxy's nature? Could one person, no matter how strong, fight against the accumulated suffering of 10,000 years? The doubt was new and uncomfortable. Goku had always believed strength could solve problems. This place suggested some problems were too vast even for gods. In the warp, the Chaos Gods felt Goku's uncertainty and moved. Tsinch's whisper found Barthas first, sliding into the Lord Commander's thoughts like oil. Show him the chaos corruption, show him what hope becomes in the Imperium. Barthas, not realizing the source of the impulse, brought up new hollow images, worlds that had fallen to chaos, not through invasion, but through seduction. Peaceful planets where hope had been weaponized into heresy, where dreams of better lives had opened doors to demons, where love had twisted into Slaneshi excess, where aspiration had become Tsinchian ambition. This is what happens when humanity hopes, Barthas said, the words not entirely his own. Chaos offers everything we desire and delivers only damnation. The images were devastating. Goku watched as hollow recordings showed happy families transformed into cultists, children's laughter turning to demon song, acts of kindness becoming rituals of sacrifice. The Chaos Gods had taken every positive human emotion and perverted it, made weapons of joy, tools of despair from hope. It was evil more insidious than anything Goku had faced. Frieza was a tyrant, Buu. It's straightforward. Buu was destructive, but honestly so. This was corruption at a philosophical level, the violation of concepts themselves. How do you fight something like that? Goku asked, his voice hollow. Akaina's response was immediate, drilled through centuries of indoctrination. You don't hope, you don't dream, you simply endure. Faith in the Emperor, duty to humanity, death before dishonor, nothing else. Goku turned away from the projections, his mind reeling. He'd wanted to understand this universe. Now he did, and the understanding was crushing. Every instinct screamed at him to reject what he'd learned, to find another way, to prove that strength and compassion could coexist even here. But the evidence was overwhelming. The Imperium was monstrous because the galaxy gave it no choice. Its cruelty was survival, its oppression was necessity, and standing in the middle of it all, Goku felt smaller than he had in years. Not physically, his power was still limitless, but morally, philosophically, he was lost. I need time to think, he said quietly. Barthas nodded, understanding. The truth of the 41st millennium had broken stronger beings than this stranger. At least Goku hadn't gone mad. Yet, Goku stood alone on the ruins of what had once been a marketplace. Scorch marks from the earlier battle scarred the ground. Blood, human and Xenos, stained the rubble. He could still hear the echoes of screaming zealots, still feel the impact of bolt rounds against his skin, still see the terror in Private Keller's eyes. Behind him, the Imperium watched and waited. Space Marines, Guardsmen, Titans powered down but ready. Naval assets in orbit with weapons hot. They'd agreed to this temporary peace, but trust was a luxury neither side could afford. Goku closed his eyes and reached out with his ki sense, feeling the planet's life force. Billions of souls, each one flickering with fear and pain and desperate survival. No joy, no peace, just existence purchased with suffering. The weight of understanding pressed down on him like gravity multiplied 1,000 times. In his universe, being strong meant protecting the weak, giving them space to live and grow and find happiness. Here, being strong meant crushing everything, hope, dreams, individuality, because those things invited corruption. The Imperium wasn't evil by choice, it was evil because the alternative was extinction. And standing in the middle of this nightmare, Goku realized something that terrified him more than any enemy he'd ever faced. He couldn't fix this, not with strength, not with ki, not with all the power in his body. He could destroy threats, but he couldn't change the fundamental nature of a galaxy that had been broken for 10 millennia. Private Keller approached slowly, his laser gun abandoned, his uniform torn and bloody. The young guardsman had watched everything, seen his superiors fail, witnessed demons banished, heard the stranger speak of a universe where people laughed. Something in Keller had broken during those revelations, but it wasn't his sanity, it was his acceptance. "Sir," Keller said, the honorific slipping out naturally, despite no rank structure demanding it. "What you said earlier, about fighting being just part of life, not all of it, did you mean that? Is that really possible?" His voice cracked with desperate need, the need to believe in something beyond the Imperium's grinding machinery. Goku opened his eyes and looked at the young soldier, really looked at him. Keller couldn't have been more than 20, but his eyes were ancient with horror. He'd seen things no child should witness, done things that would haunt him forever, all in service to an empire that viewed him as ammunition. "Yeah," Goku said softly, "it's possible. Where I come from, people fight when they have to, but they also farm and build and raise families. They create things instead of just destroying. They hope." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But I don't know if that can exist here. Your galaxy is different, meaner. It punishes hope." The admission hurt. Goku had always believed in possibilities, in training harder, in finding ways to win. This place suggested some fights couldn't be won. Brother Captain Akeem joined them, his massive armored form casting shadows across the ruins. "The question is not whether hope can exist," the Space Marine said, his voice thoughtful in a way that surprised both Goku and Keller. "The question is whether we remember how to hope. The Imperium has survived by becoming as monstrous as its enemies, by sacrificing everything that makes us human to remain human at all. It is paradox, hypocrisy, and it has worked for 10,000 years." He paused, his helmet's eye lenses focusing on Goku. "But perhaps that is not the only way. Your existence proves there are universes where strength and compassion coexist, where power protects instead of dominates. We thought such things impossible. We may have been wrong." The words hung in the air like a prayer in a temple that had forgotten gods other than the Emperor. Around them, Imperial forces listened through Vox channels and sensor feeds. Millions heard Akane's heretical suggestion that the Imperium's way might not be the only path. In the Ecclesiarchy command centers, Cardinal Matthias screamed for the Space Marines' excommunication. In the command spires, Lord Commanders quietly archived the recording for later analysis. In the trenches and factories and hive cities, ordinary humans allowed themselves to wonder, just for a moment, if suffering was truly inevitable. The thought was dangerous, possibly fatal, but once planted, it couldn't be uprooted. Goku had done what no army could accomplish. He'd made the Imperium question itself. In the warp, the Chaos Gods raged. Their attempt to break Goku had backfired catastrophically. Instead of corrupting him with despair, they'd exposed him to the Imperium's darkness, and he'd responded not with acceptance but with stubborn, stupid, impossible hope. Worse, he'd infected others with it. Space Marines weren't supposed to question, guardsmen weren't supposed to dream. Yet here they stood, contaminated with the most dangerous idea in the galaxy, that things could be different. Khorne howled for blood. Tzeentch's plans unraveled faster than he could reweave them. Nurgle felt the possibility of change, anathema to stagnation. Slaanesh tasted defiance instead of despair. The great game had been disrupted by a player who didn't know the rules and refused to learn them. Goku looked up at the smoke-choked sky, where somewhere beyond the atmosphere, his dimensional rift had closed. He was trapped here, in this grimdark hell, where hope was heresy and compassion was weakness. Every instinct screamed at him to fight, to force the galaxy to be better through sheer power. But he'd learned enough to know. Ow, that wouldn't work. Strength alone couldn't heal this wound. It needed something else, something he didn't know if he possessed. But as he looked at Keller's desperate eyes and Akane's questioning stance, Goku made a decision. "I can't fix your galaxy," he said quietly. "I'm not smart enough or wise enough for that, but I can show you what's possible. I can prove that strength doesn't have to mean cruelty." He powered up slightly, his aura flaring gold. "I don't know if it'll matter, but I have to try." The statement was simple, naive even, but it carried the weight of someone who'd saved universes through sheer refusal to quit. Lord Commander Barthas, watching from his command center, recognized that determination. It was the same stubborn defiance that had kept humanity alive for 10,000 years, just pointed in a different direction. Would it change anything? Probably not. The galaxy was too broken, too corrupt, too vast for one being to heal. But maybe, just maybe, Goku's presence would remind the Imperium of what it had lost, what it had sacrificed in exchange for survival, and perhaps that memory, however painful, was worth preserving. Barthas opened a Vox channel to all Imperial forces on Armageddon. Stand down, designate entity Goku as neutral asset, maintain observation protocols, and... He hesitated, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. Extend diplomatic courtesy. It wasn't friendship, it wasn't trust, but it was a beginning. In the grimdark universe, sometimes beginnings were the best anyone could hope for. And so Goku stands in the 41st millennium, a beacon of impossible hope in a galaxy that has forgotten what hope looks like. He cannot save this universe, cannot fix 10,000 years of accumulated suffering with strength alone. But his presence asks a question the Imperium has not dared to consider. What if survival isn't enough? What if humanity could be more than weapons and suffering and endless war? The answer remains uncertain. The Chaos Gods circle like sharks, waiting to corrupt or destroy. The ecclesiarchy plots his elimination as heretical. The military views him as an asset or threat, never a person. But in the hearts of those who witnessed his arrival, the guardsmen, the space marines, the civilians, a dangerous seed has been planted. Hope. Fragile, probably doomed, but alive. What do you think happens next? Could Goku's compassion survive in the grimdark universe? Or would the 41st millennium break even the strongest Saiyan? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this tale of impossible crossovers and grimdark reality hit different, subscribe for more journeys into the nightmare that is Warhammer 40k. Because in the grim darkness of the far future, sometimes the cruelest torture is showing people what they've lost. In the 41st millennium, there is only war. But maybe, just maybe, there could be something more.